We all know that one person, right? The friend who just seems to be a magnet for mishaps. They're always tripping over thin air, spilling their coffee, or bumping into doorways. We usually just laugh and call them clumsy or unlucky. But what if it's not that simple? What if some accidents aren't really accidental at all?
And that's really the big question, isn't it? Are all those little incidents just a string of bad luck, or could they actually be signals, maybe from our own subconscious trying to tell us something? Today we're going to dig into this fascinating psychological idea of accident proneness, and believe me, it goes way deeper than you might think. So let's get formal for a second. The clinical definition is, well, it's pretty intense. Accident proneness isn't just about being a little uncoordinated. It's described as a failure in the function of self-preservation. That's our most basic, hardwired instinct to keep ourselves safe. Suddenly, this whole thing shifts from a funny quirk to a pretty serious psychological concept we need to understand.
So how do we even begin to unpack something like that? Well, we're going to turn to the work of a psychoanalyst named Liselotte Frankel. Way back in 1963, she laid out 4 key unconscious factors that she believed could be driving this kind of behavior. Let's break them down.
Okay, so these are the 4 big ones Frankel identified. We're going to keep this slide up for a bit as we quickly run through what each of these really means. First up, bodily expression of conflict. Think of it like this. Your mind is dealing with so much stress or anxiety that it just can't handle it anymore. So your body takes over, and that internal pain literally comes out as a physical accident. Second, we have counterphobic adventures. Now this one is kind of wild. It's the idea that a person is so deeply afraid of something, they do the exact opposite. They run headfirst into dangerous situations, taking all these unnecessary risks, almost to prove to themselves, see, I'm not afraid. Number 3 is self-directed aggression. You know that feeling when you're just furious but you can't let it out? Well, this is where that anger goes inward. Instead of being directed at someone or something else, it gets turned back on the self. An accident can actually be a form of self-punishment. And finally, dramatized fantasies. This one is often seen, as you might guess, during those chaotic teenage years. It's about acting out these big, powerful, and sometimes risky internal fantasies, which can lead to some really dangerous real-world mishaps.
But here's a really crucial point Frankel made. She said, hang on a second, not all accident proneness is the same. She drew a very clear line in the sand, asking whether it was just a temporary phase or something much more permanent.
And this slide really lays out that difference. On one hand, you have age-specific accidents. This is your classic turbulent teenager stuff we just talked about. It's often temporary, linked to a specific stage of life. But then, you have the other side, a permanent character disturbance. And that's a whole different ballgame. We're talking about a pattern that's deeply ingrained in someone's personality for the long haul. It's a critical distinction.
Okay, so if this is a real psychological issue, does that mean you're just stuck with it? Is it a life sentence of bumps and bruises? Well, the good news is, according to Frankel, not at all. She believed there were absolutely paths to intervention.
So what did she recommend? Well, it boils down to a couple of key things. First, getting in there early makes a huge difference, especially for kids and teenagers showing these patterns. And second, the focus of therapy is often about helping that person free up all that aggression that's been turned against themselves and finding a healthier way to process it. And what's the end game here? Well, it's about more than just not falling down the stairs. The immediate goal is, of course, to reduce the number of accidents, to keep the person physically safe. But the long-term goal is just as important, to cut down the risk of these underlying issues growing into more serious neurotic problems later in life.
But, and this is a big but, we have to put all of this in perspective. It's really important to remember that not every single accident has some deep, hidden psychoanalytic meaning. Other researchers have come along since and added some much-needed nuance to these ideas.
And researcher Theodore Dorpat really hit the nail on the head with this back in 1978. As this quote says, he concluded that, yeah, these psychic or psychological factors, they're real. They definitely play a part in some accidents, but not all of them, you know? Sometimes a wet floor is just a wet floor. So, where does that leave us? We started out with a simple idea, right? Just clumsiness. And we've traveled all the way into the deep, murky waters of the subconscious, and back out again with a dose of reality. It really leaves you with a fascinating question to chew on. The next time you see that pattern of mishaps, how much of what we call an accident is truly accidental?